Grandma left $250,000 to my sister and $50,000 to my stepsister, but her private letter to me had the real prize and then I. This all started 3 weeks ago when my grandmother, Eleanor, our family's matriarch, passed away. She was 84 and had been the glue holding us all together, even though, let's be honest, we all have our issues. My sister, Olivia, is 28, gorgeous, driven, and everything Grandma adored in a person. Then there's Harper, my 25-year-old stepsister, who came into our lives when Mom married Daniel 10 years ago. Harper and I have never really clicked, but we were cordial enough to get by. And then there's me, Jacob, 27 years old, just sort of existing. I'm not as accomplished as Olivia or as favored as Harper, so I was bracing myself for disappointment when we all gathered to hear Grandma's will. The lawyer, Margaret, looked like she'd stepped out of some old courtroom drama. She had this stiff demeanor that made every word sound like it was carved in stone. We were sitting in Grandma's cozy living room, surrounded by her old furniture and the faint smell of lavender. My mom, Emily, and stepdad, Daniel, were perched on the edge of their seats, ready to play referee if things got tense. Spoiler, things got tense. Margaret began with the usual preamble, explaining Grandma's wishes to divvy up her estate. She talked about the charities Grandma supported, the bequests to her church, and some minor heirlooms being passed to extended family. Then she got to the part we were all waiting for. To Olivia, Margaret read, "I leave the sum of $250,000 to honor her diligence and accomplishments, which have always made me proud." I swear I heard angels sing when Olivia's jaw dropped. She tried to play it cool, but her face lit up like she'd won the lottery. Harper gave her this quick side-eye, which was almost amusing. I mean, who wouldn't be jealous? Margaret continued, "To Harper, I leave the sum of $50,000. Though our time together was shorter, I value the bond we built and hope this will aid her in her future endeavors." Harper looked satisfied, I guess. Not thrilled, but not devastated either. Mom beamed at her, while Daniel sat back smugly like he'd scored a win for his daughter. And then it was my turn. Margaret cleared her throat and looked directly at me. "To Jacob I leave a letter." A letter. At first, I thought I'd misheard. I waited for her to tack on a dollar amount, or maybe the deed to something. Nope, just a letter. Margaret pulled an envelope from her briefcase and handed it to me. My name was scrawled across it in Grandma's elegant cursive. I didn't know what to say. Olivia smirked, Harper avoided eye contact, and my mom reached over to pat my knee like I was a toddler who just scraped it on the sidewalk. Daniel, of course, couldn't resist his usual condescension. "Well, Jacob, not everything's about money. Maybe it's something meaningful." I bit back the urge to snap at him because, frankly, I was too numb. Meaningful? Sure. I just watched my sister walk away with enough money to buy a house and my stepsister with a solid boost to her savings, while I got paper. The rest of the reading was a blur. There were minor details about Grandma's house and possessions, but I wasn't paying attention. My mind was spinning, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Grandma and I had always been close, closer than she'd ever been with Olivia or Harper. We used to spend hours talking about books, history, and her old travels. She'd always told me I was her special one, whatever that meant. So why the cold shoulder in her will? After the reading, Olivia was practically glowing. "I guess Grandma knew who could put the money to good use," she said, not even trying to hide the jab. Harper chimed in, "I'm sure the letter is sentimental. Grandma always loved her little keepsakes." Mom shot me a sympathetic look but didn't say much, and Daniel just ushered Harper out the door like they had more important things to do. Typical. I pocketed the letter and left before I said something I'd regret. When I got home, I sat on my bed, staring at the envelope. My name on it looked almost like a whisper from Grandma herself. Part of me didn't even want to open it. What if it was just some generic, be a good person nonsense? Or worse, what if it was a goodbye note, a way of apologizing for not leaving me anything significant? After an hour of procrastinating, I finally ripped it open. The letter was written on Grandma's favorite stationery, the kind with little floral patterns along the edges. Her handwriting was still strong and steady, and as soon as I started reading, I knew this wasn't going to be what I'd expected. "Jacob, my dearest boy, It began. If you're reading this, it means I've passed on and the will has been read. You're likely confused, and perhaps hurt, by the lack of a tangible inheritance. But trust me when I say this letter is worth far more than money. I frowned. Worth more than money? What could possibly be worth more than $250,000? She continued, there is something I have left for you. Something precious that no one else can understand or value as you will. You must go to my attic, beneath the floorboards near the rocking chair. There, you will find a small antique box. It holds the key to your true inheritance. My heart started pounding. A box? The attic? I didn't even know Grandma's house had floorboards that lifted. The letter ended with, keep this to yourself, Jacob. Not everyone can be trusted with what you'll find. I sat there for a long time, the letter trembling in my hands. Olivia had $250,000, Harper had $50,000, and I had a scavenger hunt? It felt like a cruel joke, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore the way my stomach churned with curiosity. What was Grandma hiding, and why did she choose me for this? The day after the will reading, I couldn't stop thinking about Grandma's letter. Olivia and Harper were probably busy making plans for their newfound wealth, while I was left wrestling with a riddle. I hadn't told anyone about the letter's contents, not Mom, not even Harper, though I doubted she'd care. Grandma's warning about trust kept playing in my head, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt like this was something I needed to handle on my own. That evening, I drove back to Grandma's house. It was eerily quiet without her there, the way an empty nest feels once the birds have flown. The house smelled like a mix of lavender and old books, just like it always had. For a moment, I half expected her to shuffle in from the kitchen, offering me tea and cookies. But all that greeted me was the creak of the floorboards under my feet. The attic was the one part of the house that always gave me the creeps. It wasn't some quaint space filled with treasures. It was dark, cramped, and always seemed colder than the rest of the house. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen, climbed the narrow stairs, and pushed open the rickety attic door. Grandma's rocking chair was right where it always had been, sitting in the far corner near a dusty window. Cobwebs hung from the beams, and the air smelled faintly of mildew. I knelt by the chair, running my fingers along the floorboards until I found what I was looking for. A faint seam in the wood, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look. I grabbed a flathead screwdriver from the toolbox I'd brought and pried the board loose. My flashlight beam revealed a small, ornate wooden box nestled in the space beneath. It looked old, really old. The wood was dark and polished, with intricate carvings that almost looked like vines. The brass latch clicked open with a satisfying snap, and I held my breath as I lifted the lid. The box was empty. I sat there staring at the inside, my flashlight shaking in my hand. No money, no jewels, no deed to a secret estate. Nothing but a folded piece of paper tucked into the corner. My stomach sank. Was this some kind of cruel prank? Had Grandma really sent me on this wild goose chase for a scrap of paper? I unfolded the paper, my hands trembling. It was a map, not a detailed one, but a hand-drawn sketch of some kind of forested area. The only markings were a rough outline of trees, a small cabin, and an X scrawled in red ink. A cabin? What cabin? Grandma had never mentioned owning any property besides her house. I turned the map over, but there were no additional instructions, no explanation of what I was supposed to find. Just the cryptic drawing and the overwhelming sense that I was being pulled into something far bigger than I could understand. The next morning, I called in sick to work. There was no way I could focus on spreadsheets and deadlines while this mystery loomed over me. I spent hours Googling the area around Grandma's house, looking for anything that might match the map. After cross-referencing landmarks and using every possible search term, I finally found it, a small, nearly forgotten plot of land about an hour's drive away. It was listed as privately owned, with no further details. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Olivia and Harper wouldn't care, and Mom would only worry. I grabbed a backpack with some essentials, a flashlight, snacks, and the screwdriver, just in case, and hit the road. The drive was uneventful, but the closer I got, the more nervous I became. What was I hoping to find? A stash of gold bars? A buried family secret? By the time I reached the narrow dirt path leading to the cabin, my palms were slick with sweat. The cabin was almost exactly as it appeared on the map. It was small and weathered, with ivy creeping up the sides and the roof sagging in places. It looked like no one had been there in decades. I pushed open the creaky door, half expecting the whole structure to collapse around me. Inside, it was surprisingly intact. Dust coated every surface, but the furniture was still in place. A wooden table, a few chairs, and a large trunk in the corner. My flashlight beam caught the glint of something shiny on the table, and when I stepped closer, I saw it was another envelope with my name on it. Jacob. My heart raced as I tore it open. Grandma's familiar handwriting filled the page. My dearest Jacob, if you found this cabin, you're one step closer to understanding your true inheritance. The journals in the trunk will explain everything. But be careful. This knowledge is both a blessing and a burden. Not everyone would use it wisely, which is why I've entrusted it to you. Journals? I turned to the trunk and knelt beside it. The metal latch was rusted but still functional, and it popped open with a groan. Inside were several leather-bound books, their pages yellowed with age. Each one had a year written on the spine, starting in the 1960s and running up to the early 2000s. I grabbed the first journal and flipped it open. The entries were written in Grandma's handwriting, neat and precise. But as I skimmed through the pages, my stomach tightened. These weren't just diary entries about her day-to-day life. They were detailed accounts of deals, investments, and something darker. One entry from 1985 caught my eye. Asterisk, the inheritance is safe for now. Daniel suspects nothing, though I fear he's watching me more closely than before. I must ensure Jacob knows the truth when the time comes. He's the only one who can be trusted to carry this forward. Asterisk, Daniel? My stepfather? What the hell did he have to do with Grandma's estate? I kept reading, the pieces slowly falling into place. Grandma had amassed her fortune through a combination of savvy investments and risky, borderline illegal ventures. She'd been careful to keep it all hidden, not even telling Mom or Olivia. And Daniel, he'd been trying to uncover it for years, hoping to claim it for himself. By the time I closed the journal, my head was spinning. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about family secrets, betrayal, and a responsibility I wasn't sure I wanted. Grandma had trusted me with something monumental, and I didn't even fully understand what it was yet. I packed the journals into my backpack and left the cabin, my mind racing. Whatever Grandma's true inheritance was, it wasn't going to be easy to unravel. And I had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. Driving home from the cabin, my thoughts churned like a storm. The journals weighed heavily in my backpack and on my mind. What had Grandma been hiding, and why did it seem like she'd been playing a long, secretive game with our family? More importantly, why was I the one she trusted to uncover it all? I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I thought I knew about my family was about to be flipped on its head. I spent the rest of the night poring over the journals. Most entries detailed her investments, clever plays in real estate, stock markets, and even art. But there were also cryptic notes scattered throughout, as if she'd been leaving breadcrumbs for me to follow. One passage from the mid-1990s stopped me cold. Asterisk, I've done all I can to keep the inheritance safe. Daniel's interference has grown more troubling. He's already managed to manipulate Emily into believing he's a good man, but I see through his facade. Jacob will need to know the truth one day. The key is in the place we used to call our sanctuary. Asterisk, the place we used to call our sanctuary. I racked my brain. Grandma and I had spent countless afternoons together, but the word sanctuary didn't ring any bells. Another passage added to the mystery. Asterisk, I must protect Jacob from the burden of what's been done. He deserves better than the lies that have kept this family together. But he is the only one who can bear the truth when the time comes. Asterisk, what lies? What burden? The more I read, the more questions I had. One thing was becoming clear, though. Daniel, my stepfather, wasn't just an overbearing presence in my life. He'd been actively trying to meddle in Grandma's affairs for years. But why? The next day, I returned to the map. The journals hadn't given me a direct answer, but something about the cabin's location nagged at me. I spread the map out on my desk, staring at the red X Grandma had drawn. Then it hit me. The cabin wasn't the end of the journey. It was just the first step. I noticed faint pencil marks branching out from the cabin, almost like trails leading deeper into the forest. Following one of the trails on the map, I saw a small dot with no label. My gut told me this was the sanctuary Grandma had written about. I decided to go back, this time better prepared. I packed extra water, a first aid kit, and even a pocket knife, just in case. Something about this whole situation felt bigger than me, and I didn't want to take any chances. Before leaving, I double-checked that no one had noticed the journals. Olivia and Harper didn't even know they existed, and I intended to keep it that way. The trek from the cabin to the dot on the map was longer than I'd anticipated. The forest was dense, with twisted roots and overgrown paths that made the hike feel like an obstacle course. About an hour in, I stumbled upon something that stopped me in my tracks. It was a clearing, with a weathered stone bench in the center. Carved into the bench were the words, * in memory of Eleanor's first love. * My stomach tightened. Grandma had never talked about a first love, at least not with me. As far as I knew, she'd been a widow for most of her life after losing my grandfather in his 40s. Who was this mystery person, and why would she leave this here? On the ground beneath the bench was another envelope, sealed with wax. My name was written on it in Grandma's unmistakable handwriting. Jacob, the letter began, "You're close." This bench marks the beginning of a story I've never told anyone, not even your mother. It's the story of who I really am, who our family really is, and why you must protect the truth at all costs. The letter went on to explain that the bench was dedicated to a man named William, someone Grandma had loved deeply before she met my grandfather. William, it turned out, had been involved in some kind of secretive venture with Eleanor, something that had laid the foundation for the fortune she'd later built. But the letter also came with a warning. There are those who would do anything to claim what William and I built together. You must tread carefully, Jacob. The sanctuary holds the answers you seek, but it also holds dangers I've spent my life keeping at bay. I folded the letter and slipped it into my backpack, my hands trembling. The story of William was news to me, and it painted Grandma in a completely different light. She wasn't just the warm, tea-drinking lady I'd grown up with. She was someone with secrets, big ones. It took another hour to find the sanctuary. At first glance, it looked like a collapsed structure, barely distinguishable from the surrounding forest. The walls were crumbling, and the roof had caved in, leaving only a skeletal frame. But as I approached, I noticed something odd. A portion of the ground near the back wall looked disturbed, as if someone had recently dug there. I grabbed my flashlight and carefully cleared away the loose dirt. After about 10 minutes, I uncovered a metal hatch, rusted but intact. The handle was stiff, and it took all my strength to pry it open. What lay beneath sent shivers down my spine. A ladder descended into darkness. I climbed down, the air growing colder and damper with each rung. At the bottom, my flashlight illuminated a small underground room, lined with shelves filled with dusty ledgers, old photographs, and more journals. In the center of the room was a large chest, similar to the one in the cabin but much sturdier. I opened it cautiously, half expecting to find another cryptic map or letter. Instead, it was filled with bundles of documents, all stamped with official seals. Deeds, contracts, stock certificates, evidence of a financial empire that had been carefully hidden for decades. But one document stood out, a handwritten will, dated years before the one we'd heard at Margaret's office. This will left everything, not just the money, but the properties, investments, and artifacts, to me. I sat down on the cold, damp floor, trying to process what I was looking at. Grandma had planned for me to inherit everything, long before the revised will that split her estate between Olivia and Harper. Why had she changed it? Had she been forced to? Had Daniel gotten involved somehow? As I sifted through the documents, I found something even more chilling. There were references to blackmail, lawsuits, and shady business deals, all tied to Daniel. Grandma's journals had hinted at his interference, but now I had proof. He hadn't just been meddling. He'd been actively working to undermine her and seize control of her fortune. I stuffed as many documents as I could into my backpack, leaving the rest hidden for now. As I climbed back up the ladder, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. This was about protecting it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind replayed what I'd found in the sanctuary. The secret will, the documents implicating Daniel, and the sheer weight of what Grandma had entrusted to me. It was overwhelming. I was now the keeper of a legacy steeped in mystery and danger, but I didn't know how long I could keep it hidden. The next morning, I called Margaret, the lawyer. If anyone could help me make sense of this without blowing everything up, it was her. I asked to meet her privately, avoiding specifics over the phone. She agreed, though her tone was cautious. I think she could tell something big was happening. When I arrived at her office, I laid everything out, the map, the journals, and the hidden will. Margaret's expression shifted from curiosity to shock as she leafed through the documents. This changes everything, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This will predates the one I read at the meeting. Legally, it could override the newer one, but only if we prove the circumstances under which the newer will was created. What circumstances? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. She hesitated. If Eleanor was coerced or influenced when she drafted the newer will, it could be invalidated. From what you're showing me here, it's possible your stepfather played a role in persuading her to make changes. Coerced. Influenced. The words made my blood boil. Daniel had always been a controlling presence in our family, but if he'd meddled in Grandma's final wishes, I'd never forgive him. Margaret leaned forward. Jacob, you need to be careful. If your stepfather is involved, he won't take kindly to this information coming to light. And from what I'm seeing in these documents, he's capable of more than we might expect. I nodded, my throat tight. This wasn't just about money or inheritance anymore. This was about uncovering the truth, no matter the cost. When I got home, Olivia and Harper were waiting for me in the living room. Their expressions told me everything I needed to know. They were suspicious. Where have you been? Olivia asked, crossing her arms. Her tone was sharp, accusatory. Just out, I said, trying to sound casual. Why? Harper chimed in. We've noticed you've been acting weird. Ever since the will reading, you've been sneaking off and avoiding everyone. What's going on? I shook my head, feigning ignorance. Nothing's going on. I've just been processing everything, like you guys. But Olivia wasn't buying it. Processing what, exactly? You got a letter. Harper and I got actual inheritances. You have nothing to process, unless there's something you're not telling us. Her words hit harder than I expected. Olivia had always been competitive, always looking for an edge. Harper, on the other hand, looked more curious than confrontational. I couldn't tell if she was on Olivia's side or just trying to figure me out. I don't have anything, I said, forcing a shrug. If I did, don't you think I'd be flaunting it like you guys? That seemed to pacify Harper, but Olivia's glare lingered. I could tell this wasn't over. Later that night, I heard voices in the kitchen. Mom, Daniel, and Olivia were talking in hushed tones, their words carrying just far enough for me to catch fragments. He's hiding something, Olivia said. Always been secretive, Daniel muttered. Maybe Eleanor told him something before she died, Mom suggested, her voice softer but tinged with concern. I crept closer, my heart pounding. Were they on to me? Did they know about the sanctuary? The journals? The will? We need to keep an eye on him, Daniel said, his tone cold and calculating. If there's something he's holding back, we'll find out. I clenched my fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Daniel had no right to meddle in Grandma's affairs, or mine. But I couldn't confront him now, not without risking everything. Instead, I slipped back to my room, determined to stay one step ahead. The next day, Harper approached me while I was out in the backyard. She had a hesitant look on her face, like she wasn't sure how to start the conversation. Hey, she said, fiddling with the edge of her sweater. Can we talk? About what? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She glanced around, as if making sure we were alone. Look, I don't know what's going on, but Olivia's been saying all kinds of things. She thinks you're hiding some big secret. Is she right? I hesitated. Harper wasn't like Olivia. She wasn't driven by competition or greed. but I still couldn't risk revealing too much. There's nothing to hide, I said. Grandma left me a letter. That's it. Harper frowned. Then why are you so jumpy lately? It's like you're avoiding everyone, I sighed, deciding to give her a sliver of the truth. Because Olivia and Daniel are circling me like vultures. They think I'm sitting on some treasure chest of secrets, and it's exhausting. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough. But just be careful, okay? I don't trust Daniel. He's always been too controlling. Her words surprised me. For someone who shared his DNA, Harper seemed to have just as much mistrust for Daniel as I did. I gave her a small nod of thanks, and she walked away, leaving me to my thoughts. That evening, things took a turn I hadn't expected. I was in my room, rereading one of Grandma's journals, when Olivia barged in without knocking. In her hand was one of the maps, the one I thought I'd hidden in my backpack. Care to explain this? She demanded, waving it in my face. My heart stopped. How had she found it? Had she gone through my things? It's nothing, I said quickly, trying to snatch it from her. But she pulled it back, her eyes narrowing. Don't lie to me, Jacob. You've been running around with some treasure hunt while Harper and I are sitting here wondering why Grandma gave you a letter instead of money. What are you hiding? I could feel my temper rising, but I forced myself to stay calm. I'm not hiding anything. That's just something Grandma gave me to remember her by. Olivia snorted. Bullshit. You're up to something, and I'm going to find out what it is. She stormed out before I could stop her, leaving me with the sinking realization that the walls were closing in. If Olivia and Daniel were already this suspicious, it was only a matter of time before they uncovered the truth. And when they did, I wasn't sure I'd be able to protect what Grandma had left me. The next few days were pure chaos. Olivia's discovery of the map had set off a chain reaction. She was relentless, snooping around the house and questioning me at every turn. Harper was quieter but observant, clearly trying to piece things together. And Daniel? He seemed to be everywhere, watching me with that smug, calculating look that made my skin crawl. I knew it was only a matter of time before they cornered me, so I decided to go on the offensive. If I was going to protect Grandma's legacy and uncover the full truth, I needed to act fast. That evening, I waited until the house was quiet. Then I grabbed my backpack, loaded with the journals, the documents, and the maps, and slipped out. I didn't have a concrete plan, but I knew I had to get everything to a safe place. Margaret had hinted she could help if things escalated, so I decided to head to her office. But as I backed out of the driveway, I saw a shadow move near the edge of the yard. Someone was watching me. I sped off, my heart pounding. Had Olivia followed me? Daniel? Either way, I couldn't risk leading them to Margaret. I took a detour, driving aimlessly for half an hour before finally pulling into a secluded park. I sat there, trying to calm my nerves, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Harper. Asterisk, we need to talk. Alone. I know more than you think. Asterisk. I met Harper at a diner on the edge of town. She looked nervous but determined, her fingers fidgeting with the rim of her coffee cup. Thanks for meeting me, she said as I slid into the booth across from her. You said you know something, I replied. What is it? She hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. I've been digging through some of Daniel's stuff. He's hiding things about Grandma, about her will. I found emails, Jacob. Emails between him and Margaret. My stomach dropped. What kind of emails? Ones where he's pressuring her to help revise the will. He kept saying it was for the family's benefit, but it's obvious he was trying to cut you out. Anger surged through me. I'd suspected Daniel was involved, but this confirmed it. Why are you telling me this? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Aren't you on his side? Harper shook her head. I've never been on his side. He's been controlling my life for years, and I'm done with it. Besides, I think Grandma trusted you for a reason. Whatever she left for you, it's important. More important than money. Her words caught me off guard. For the first time, I saw Harper as an ally instead of a rival. But before I could say anything, the diner door swung open and Olivia walked in. Her eyes locked onto us, and she stormed over to the booth. Really, Jacob? Sneaking around with Harper now? She snapped. What the hell is going on? Olivia, this isn't what you think. Harper started, but Olivia cut her off. Don't give me that crap. You've both been hiding something, and I'm done being left out. If there's more to Grandma's inheritance, I deserve to know about it. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Olivia, this isn't about you. It's about protecting what Grandma wanted. Oh, please, she scoffed. Grandma didn't leave you anything because she knew you'd screw it up. I'm the responsible one. I'm the one who deserves to handle her legacy. Her words hit like a slap, but I didn't have time to argue. Olivia wasn't going to back down, and I couldn't risk her or Daniel getting their hands on the truth. I stood up, tossing some cash on the table. I don't have time for this. Harper followed me out, leaving Olivia fuming in the diner. What now? She asked as we climbed into my car. Now, I said, gripping the steering wheel, we find out what Grandma was hiding. We returned to the sanctuary under cover of darkness, using flashlights to navigate the dense forest. Harper had insisted on coming along, claiming she had as much right to know the truth as I did. I wasn't thrilled about it, but at this point, I needed all the help I could get. When we reached the underground room, I showed her the chest and the documents inside. Her eyes widened as she realized the scope of what Grandma had left behind. This is insane, she whispered, flipping through the deeds and contracts. This isn't just an inheritance, it's a dynasty. I nodded. And Daniel's been trying to steal it for years. As we searched through the papers, something caught my eye. A small, locked compartment built into the chest. It was hidden so well I almost missed it. I pried it open with my pocket knife, revealing a bundle of letters tied together with a ribbon. One of the letters was addressed to me. Jacob, it began. If you found this, you now know the full truth. The fortune I've built isn't just money or property, it's a responsibility. It's the culmination of sacrifices made by those who came before us. You are the rightful heir, not because of bloodlines or favoritism, but because I trust you to protect it. The letter went on to explain that Daniel had been trying to gain control of her estate for years, using manipulation and deceit to position himself as a trusted member of the family. Grandma had seen through his lies, but she'd been forced to play along to protect me. But the final revelation stopped me cold. Jacob, you are not Daniel's stepson. You are William's grandson. Your mother was my daughter, but William was her father. That is why this legacy belongs to you. I stared at the letter, the words blurring as the weight of the truth settled over me. William, Grandma's first love, was my real grandfather. Daniel had no claim to this fortune, no right to interfere. This was my family's legacy, and I was going to protect it. Harper sat silently as I explained everything, her face a mix of shock and awe. So, you're not even related to Daniel? I shook my head. Not by blood. And now I understand why Grandma trusted me. She knew he couldn't be trusted. Before we could say more, we heard the sound of footsteps above us. My blood ran cold. Someone had found us. Jacob, Daniel's voice echoed down the hatch. I know you're down there. Bring everything up now. I exchanged a panicked glance with Harper. What do we do? She whispered. We protect this, I said, clutching the documents and journals. No matter what.